This talk is about underutilized plants for riparian buffers, so if you weren't expecting to hear that, you're in the wrong room. I'm going to start off by introducing myself, hopefully to prove to you that I'm worthy of your attention today. I started my career off after graduating Susquehanna University. I went and traveled for 6 months. I spent 3 months in Australia and 3 months in New Zealand. I was a willing worker on organic farms, so I was woofing, if anyone's familiar with that program. I started off woofing here in Tasmania on the Tasman Bay. I spent my day pruning currants, digging soil, harvesting parsley for an artisanal jam and chutney maker who made us delicious meals every night. And I thought, this is pretty freaking awesome. I like this horticulture thing. Oops, I lost my microphone. Sorry about that. It wasn't all work in Australia. We also got to dive on the Great Barrier Reef while I was there. I came back with a strong passion for horticulture, but I had no idea what I was doing. This was my very first rain garden I ever installed. It's overflowing, it's full of mulch, it doesn't have enough plants, and most importantly, it's at the top of a hill. So not really the greatest rain garden in the world, but hey, I had passion and I was excited about what I was doing. Knowing that I needed to learn more, I joined AmeriCorps. I was in AmeriCorps Vista at Bucknell University. I was working at the Lewisburg Community Garden. Everything we grew at this community garden was volunteer-led and produced by volunteers, and it went to a local hot meal program for underserved populations. This was my very first plant sale. 2,000 plants. Sounds like a lot. It's not anymore, and we'll talk about why that's not a big number. So that was all of the plants for the plant sale. I was very proud of that. After my year of service at AmeriCorps came to a close, I joined a place called Longwood Gardens. Who here knows Longwood Gardens? Good, a lot of hands. I was a professional gardener. Here's me, professional gardener student, which is now called the Professional Horticulture Program. Here's me pretending to be a scientist and me pretending to be an arborist. We pretended to be a lot of things during that program. It was a 2-year, very intensive program that I excelled and really enjoyed being a part of. This is my garden that was on display for 1 year as a part of the student exhibition gardens. It was called The Dancer. After my 2 years in the program, I got hired at Longwood Gardens, which is where I met my wife, Claire. Say hi, Claire. I was the woody plant grower there, propagating plants. Claire was a propagator there as well, growing stock plants. I was in charge of a lot of the plants that went on display for Christmas. So this is behind the scenes at Christmas. Grew these plants all year long for 6 weeks of display. So they went on to display for 6 weeks and then came off display and went into a back of house area looking like this. We also grew some really, really big plants. So this is a copperleaf beech that we were installing with one of these giant pieces of equipment. After I spent 3 years at Longwood. It was an excellent experience, but I was ready to do something that was a little bit better for the world and for the environment. See a lot of nodding heads. It was a call to action for me. So in 2021, I joined Octoraro Native Plant Nursery. So this is a drone video that I took that I'm going to talk over. This is our original location. We have been in business for 35 years. I joined in 2021 as the head propagator. Everything we grow is grown from seed. We do not grow any cultivars. It's all species type plants, all trees and shrubs. So we don't do any herbaceous or vines. This is our original location, as I already said. We grow about 350,000 plants per year. So remember when I said I thought 2,000 plants was a lot? 350,000 plants is truly a lot. We are more of a mid-sized nursery, so if this seems like a big nursery, it is large, but we are not the biggest in town. We have 2 locations. Our second location is not pictured here, which is our Ticklewood location. Ticklewood was originally a ball and burlap nursery for decades, and they sold to our landlords in 2019, and we started working on that property in 2020. We were building and constructing a brand new propagation facility there in 2020, which I didn't get to experience all the stresses of building in 2020. I just showed up in 2021 and started growing great plants. So this is coming to the end of our video here. You're going to get an overview of the entire area. And I apologize, this is really amateur drone photography. I got one a couple of weeks ago and was just out flying it around. So this is an overhead shot of the entire nursery, one of our 2 locations. So I want to talk about riparian buffers and why we're here today. What is a riparian buffer? You people in this room should know better than me what a riparian. Go ahead, shout it out.
The strip of
Yep, perfect. That's what a riparian buffer is. What are riparian buffers, what are they supposed to do? Let's ask that question. Give me one. Okay. Two. Pollutants and sediments, right? Cool the stream. We want canopy closure, right? Wildlife habitat. We're going to be talking a lot about that today. So these are all reasons for riparian buffers and why we do what we do. And the reason I want to talk about underutilized plants and riparian buffers is because we are losing the battle right now. We have lost, I got a list here so I don't forget any. We have lost the American chestnut. We've lost the American elm. We've lost ash. We used to grow 30,000 ash trees a year. Overnight, gone. We're just losing species. Black walnut's under threat from thousand cankers disease. Viburnum, because of the viburnum leaf beetle that's coming down from the north, is becoming a threat, as well as plants like pin oak because of sudden oak death and bacterial leaf scorch. So we're just losing species.
Sorry, you have to mention the beach.
Yo, sorry, thank you. American beech, it's on my list. I was getting there, thank you. American beech with leaf nematodes, another great plant in our landscape that is just going away. So what are we going to do? Are we going to just bow down and say this is our fate and we're just going to lose plants? I don't think that's the answer. The answer is that we need to keep using the workhorse species we've always used. We need to use sycamores, we need to use river birch, silky dogwood, buttonbush, but we also need to look further out and see what other species we can replace those plants that we are losing in the landscape. This is a map of BONAP, Biota of North America. Anyone familiar with this? I see some nodding heads. No? So let me familiarize you with this. This is something that we're going to be talking a lot today about these maps. This is a map that displays the nativity of a given species. So this is Quercus fellows, or willow oaks, native range. The dark green represents its native in the state. So you can see what states it's native to. Light green indicates that it's native to that county. It's been observed growing in that county. Yellow means it's rare in that county. We're going to go over some other colors, but I want you to get those three colors in your mind first, all right? Dark green state, yellow, light green native to the county, yellow rare. So the interesting thing about this map is that Quercus fellows 30 years ago, we could not reliably overwinter in a container because our environment was too cold at that time. Now it's a plant that we grow by the thousands that is reliably hardy in a container, reliably hardy in our landscape. So as we're starting to lose other oak species, we're starting to lose more northern species, plants that we really struggle with growing anymore is Populus tremuloides, which is quaking ash. Excuse me, Latin is my first language, and then the common names are a challenge. I will try to use both. Quaking aspen and sugar maple is another great one that we're just starting to lose the battle to climate change. So not only are we under threat by insects, pathogens, exotic pests, we are also under threat of more severe climates, longer drought periods, more flooding, hotter climate. So we have to look more outside of that native range. And it's not just about outside of Pennsylvania, but we also have to look at what's underutilized within Pennsylvania. So we're going to talk about both of those categories today. This is me bragging. These are all of the plants that we grow at Octoraro Native Plant Nursery. So we don't grow all of these every year. I look at this as when you go to a Led Zeppelin concert, they don't play every one of their songs at every concert, but they're always going to do Stairway, right? So we're always going to do buttonbush, we're always going to do sycamore, but there's some of these oddball species that we're starting to throw in the mix because we need to find out what works from our growing standpoint, and then we need to get it into your hands in the installation, see how it works in landscape. So out of this is 163 species. The last species on the list, Xanthozylum americanum, or prickly ash, is a plant that we haven't even grown yet, but we have seeds, so it's in our database. So there's a lot of plants on this list that haven't even gotten out into the world because we have the seeds, we're ready to grow them, we're stratifying them, we're scarifying them, they're in our greenhouse currently growing, and hopefully in the next couple of years you'll see them as available. So we're going to break this down into two sections. We're going to talk about shrubs, and then we'll talk about trees. I'm going to take a break when we get to the trees so that we can ask some questions. You've been very interactive so far, which is excellent, and we're going to keep doing that. So when we get to the end of shrubs, we'll have a little break just to have like 5 minutes worth of questions. Every one of these species, I will give you the wetland indicator status of, whether it's wetland, facultative upland, whatever. We'll talk about the environmental, the ecological benefits of these plants. So it's not just about waterways, it's also about what we provide to mammals, birds, and insects, right? So we're going to start with Symphoricarpus orbiculatus. Oh, is anyone under 18 in here? Okay, then I can use this term. We're going to see a lot of plant porn today. All right? So a lot of plant porn coming your way. Hopefully you're ready for that. This is an X-rated presentation. Symphoricarpus orbiculatus coralberry. Here's your first example of plant porn. These are the berries on Symphoricarpus orbiculatus. We see them producing flowers and berries within 2 years. So this is a pretty fast-growing, aggressive plant that reaches maturity quickly, which is really great because it starts doing its job in the environment right away. It is a facultative upland species. A lot of the plants we're going to be talking about today are facultative upland. Some of that has to do with the fact that a lot of the wetland sites that we work in are sort of these perched areas where you have a deep river, valley, creek that has scoured through the landscape, and now we have this area that's really high and dry, except when it's not. So I was looking for plants that are considered sort of facultative upland or facultative, but are workhorses wherever you place them in the environment. So this is one of those workhorse species, or hopefully future workhorse species. The shrubs that I focus on today, I tried to find ones that are resistant to deer. Deer is a huge issue with our riparian buffers, especially our shrubs, the shrub layer. We can put the tree tubes around our trees to prevent herbivory, is that the right word, for deer grazing, and deer browse, I guess is the right word, and also the buck rub. But we can't really do that as well with shrubs, especially suckering shrubs. So we need to rely on their ability to resist the deer natively. So I use, Rutgers has been doing a deer browse study for, as far as I know, decades at this point. It's a really great resource, and they do an A, B, C, or D rating. A meaning it's never been observed, B being rarely observed. Most of the plants we're going to be talking today is B rating. So a deer has to be pretty desperate to want to eat these plants. All right, this is the risky moment. Will this video work? Who has seen this little guy before? All right, this is a clear-winged snowberry moth. So if you didn't know what it was called, if you called it a bumblebee moth like I did when I was a little kid, you were probably right. But clear-winged snowberry moth are reliant on snowberries and other plants, but one of them being Symphoricarpus orbiculatus. Something I'll try to do for every plant is to give you the form. I'll probably do a lot of close-up pictures of plants we have at the nursery, and then some more form pictures. So this is a densely sort of thicket forming shrub, not super tall, probably gets about my height, so it's not giant. It's not going to be causing canopy closure, which we identified as one of the primary goals. But I think we lose sight of the shrub layer for the trees, right? We're so focused on canopy closure that we don't look at shrubs. So shrubs are critically important for so many reasons. And I wanted to focus on plants that have that ability to be kind of bullies in the landscape, not just gentle ornamental plants. Speaking of very aggressive plants,
Could you give the deer rating?
I'm going to try and do that for the shrub species. I can talk about it for the tree species, but I think it's more important for the shrubs, but I will do that for each of the shrubs. B rating, yep. Amorpha fruticosa, or false indigo bush, can really be a bully in the landscape. I mentioned that we'd be talking about different colors on this map. Hopefully you can all see that map there. Can all of you see the magenta color, or I see nodding heads. So there's two regions on the map that have that magenta color, up in Connecticut and the Pacific Northwest. That means it's adventive, so it's actually considered invasive. So it's a native plant that is so aggressive outside of its native range that is choking waterways and causing more problems than good. So this is a plant that you want to plant where you know you want it. I don't recommend it for small streams. This would be for a larger stream or waterway, because you could end up actually choking out the stream that you're trying to preserve. Really, really aggressive plant, facultative wetland. This also has a B rating for deer. Anybody fans of the silver-spotted skipper or southern dogface? Well, if you were fans, you'd be planting this because there's a host plant for those two. I don't know anything more than you do about those plants other than I looked them up. The point of me belaboring Lepidoptera species is because of what Doug Talmey's written over the years, that if we feed the caterpillars, we're feeding the rest of the food chain. So I'm going to keep coming back to caterpillars over and over again, reinforcing that idea. I will talk about some other bugs, but this is a great pollinator plant. Again, another plant that blooms very early in its life cycle. Seed to 2 year, 1.5-year-old, it's starting to flower already. So a great plant. Fothergilla gardeniae, witch alder. Have I stumped anyone on plants so far? Who has? Okay, a couple of people have stumped so far. I'm hoping to stump all of you by the end of this presentation. Fothergilla gardeniae, or witch alder, famous in the native lands, or the ornamental trade under Mount Airy. A lot of people know Fothergilla gardeniae, Mount Airy. This is a picture taken at Mount Cuba Center. Anyone familiar with Mount Cuba? All right. We are in the midst of the conservation propagator for Mount Cuba Center. My wife, Claire. She, prior to joining Octorary Native Plant Nursery, was the propagator there. So we spent a lot of time at Mount Cuba Center. This is a picture in their woodland of a Fothergilla. Fothergilla is an odd choice because it's not truly native to Pennsylvania. And this is where we talk about assisted migration of plants. There's a lot of buzz about assisted migration. Should we do it? Shouldn't we be doing it? If you're considering assisting migration, this is a great plant to do so because, as you can see, the yellow means that it is rare in counties outside of its native range. So why is it rare there? Possibly because it's getting too hot for it to grow down there. So it might be going extinct in its native range if we want to see it preserved along with all of the wonderful insects that rely on it. It's up to us to preserve it in a different way than it's able to on its own. Fothergilla is actually a facultative wetland species, so it grows in very deep, moist woodlands areas. If you were to just Google this online, it would just simply say understory, wanting shade. I totally disagree with that. I've seen it grown up against houses in really, really harsh, hot, arid environments. I've also seen it growing in wet environments, so it seems to thrive in both. It has really great bottle brush flowers on it and spectacular fall color as well. So a good plant ornamentally. I think it deserves a second look for use in the trade. Facultative wetland in the Hemalidaceae family, which is a witch hazel, right? Witch hazel family, and has a B rating for deer resistance. Calycanthus floridus, or Carolina allspice, as its name suggests, more of a southern species. That teal color you see on the map, teal means that it grows in the state, but it's been moved there by humans. Calycanthus floridus takes a little longer to bloom on more mature shrubs. It is a large, upright, vase-shaped shrub, so don't expect this to be suckering and taking over a wetland or something like this. It's more of a polite plant. Beautiful burgundy, would you say, color there. Really, really interesting flower structure. It has really interesting seed pods as well. Almost looks like a shower head, like almost like a lotus seed pod in a way. I wish I had a good picture of that for you to show you today. Facultative upland species, does tolerate deer browse. Got beer on the brain already, too early in the day. And it's got a B rating for deer resistance. This is a picture I just took the other day. These are the seedlings of Calycanthus, of Carolina allspice. Really interesting cotyledons. The only other cotyledon I've seen that looks like that, cotyledon being for our accounting major in the room, is the leaves of a seedling. So it's the first leaves before the true leaves emerge. And if you didn't know in the audience, there's your little botany lesson for today. Yeah?
The Latin name is Calycanthus floridus?
Floridus.
And what is the common name?
Carolina allspice. Yep. It has several common names, but that's the one I'm going with. Yeah, really cute cotyledons. When it emerges, it looks like little Shrek ears. You can recognize it in the greenhouse very easily. It's very adorable. It's squeal worthy. Hydrangea arborescens, smooth hydrangea. Who is familiar with smooth hydrangea? Who has seen this before? All your hands should be going up. You've probably all seen this in the landscape. This is not what we want. This is what we want. Hydrangea arborescens, when it is grown from seed as a species type, not a cultivar, so not a cultivated variety, it has tons of fertile flowers. You can see 2 sterile flowers on this plant, which are the showier flowers. Proven winners, Southern Living, other names I shouldn't be mentioning in this room, have bred this plant to absolute death to the point where it's no longer useful for pollinators. That pollinators can't access the fertile flowers. So this is me telling you that you should be buying species type plants for a variety of reasons. One of them is that breeding has gone the wrong direction for many plants, that we focused on showy aspects and not the ecological value, which is a great segue into this picture. This is at Mount Cuba's plant trials. Did I get it right? Plant trials. Mount Cuba does a plant trial every year for a variety of species of plants. Well, they choose one for every year. Every year they do a species. One year they did Hydrangea arborescens or smooth hydrangea. Smooth hydrangea, interestingly enough, the one that won, that got the highest score, was Haas Halo, which is a cultivated variety, but it does have tons of fertile flowers. So there are cultivated varieties. They're not all bad, but the species type was second most for pollinator visits. So what they do, they actually have a group of volunteers that go and just stare at a plant and count how many times a pollinator visits that plant in the course of a minute. And they develop scores for those plants. So smooth hydrangea is a really, really great plant for pollinators, native up and down the East Coast. I have seen it growing, if anyone's familiar with Sickman's Mill, it's a great fun spot to go in the summer. You can go floating down the Peckway Creek. I was told it's not the I don't know what I said originally. There's the right way, the wrong way, and the Peckway. So we were floating down the Peckway Creek, and it was the middle of summer, and out of the corner of my eye, I see these white flowers. I was like, holy crap, that is Hydrangea arborescens growing in full shade in what I would call like a seep. Not really a waterfall, but just in constant water. So it is facultative upland. I don't know who decided that, because that's not where I've seen it growing natively. I've also seen it at Shanks Ferry Wildflower Preserve, again growing in this seepy sort of moss area. This is a plant that a lot of people in the ornamental trade will say wants afternoon shade, because it does get wilty in the summer or the hot summer sun. I think it's more resilient to that. I've seen this, we hack this thing back, it bounces back, we have it in full sun, blazing hot heat. The species type seems to be tougher than the ornamental versions of it. So this is the last, we're believe it or not, we're getting close to halfway through the presentation. This is the last shrub species I have for you. So as I promised, I'd take a 5-minute breather for some questions. So if you have any questions on those shrub species, is a good time I could go back in slides or answer those questions. Go ahead.
How is hydrangea arborescens related to or completely different from the climbing hydrangea?
I believe Hydrangea petiolaris is not native.
When I bought it, I was told it was. But
I'm pretty sure it's not native. I'm not.
I mean, because the flowers look similar, except that the petiolaris, I guess, is flatter.
Yep. Yeah. I think that it's a non-native hydrangea species. There's a lot of non-native hydrangeas that people have brought in for ornamental value. One of the other hydrangeas that we're fooling around with is Hydrangea radiata, which is silverleaf hydrangea. Interesting plant, has purely silver leaves, the underside of the leaves. So interesting plant. I think from what we've seen, arborescens is going to be the workhorse, and silverleaf hydrangea is going to be found in your backyard, and you'll bring your friends out there after dinner and show off your silverleaf hydrangea. But arborescens is one that deserves to be in a riparian buffer somewhere. Yep.
I was just saying, worried about the Fothergilla
Sure.
that we have. Ours is growing in gravel, beside a gravel driveway, very dry, well-drained area, and in the summertime, the shrub basically vibrates with bees. It is such an attractor to pollinators these days.
Yeah, our wetland indicator statuses are useful, but they don't paint the whole picture of what the plant is.
Rugged plant.
It's a really rugged, tough plant that can survive wet environments and dry environments. Yep.
Are there nurseries that frequently grow species like type of plants, or will you find, are they hard to find, like already grown?
There's not enough of them. Let's just say that there's not enough of them. It's more and more as. This is a whole nother talk, but I'll give you this snippet. It's harder and harder to start a large scale wholesale nursery like we are today. More and more of them are going out of business. More and more of them are not succeeding in succession planning. So we're seeing more and more of them go away. And you're getting more and more backyard nurseries, which is great. I'm glad people are out there growing plants, but those backyard nurseries are not meeting the demand that is out there today for species type plants. There's a couple really big nurseries similar to Octorara Pinelands Nursery in New Jersey. You're a New Jersey boy, so they're down there in the Pine Barrens. Who else am I forgetting? Tuckahoe Nursery, Ecotone, and Aquatic Resource, what's ARC, AARC, not AARP. So yeah, there's not as many as there should be.
And I just want to add that I find more nurseries aren't getting more native plants
Yep.
because of the demand, but they don't have the knowledge about whether it's a species or, they can't tell you much about the plant.
Right, yeah, education is a big thing for retail nurseries. We're seeing more and more demand for retail plants from our end. Most of our plants do go out to riparian buffers. Chesapeake Bay Foundation is our biggest purchaser of plants. The 10K program is going away. So most of our plants do end up on riparian buffers, but over the years we have started to see a transition, a big transition to garden centers starting to purchase our plants. I'll take one more question, then maybe we'll hold the rest for the rest. I haven't heard from you yet today, I don't think. Yeah, yourself.
Yeah.
Who,
So
me?
we do a lot of plantings in Chester County, and one of our biggest issues, like in addition to the deer, is like mile limit and Japanese hop choking out the plants.
Yeah.
You mentioned the false indigo bush and how aggressive it is. Have you seen it kind of compete with the invasive species at all, or any other shrubs that you can recommend that could kind of fight those?
Out of any of them, it would be false indigo bush. That would be able to outgrow. Your biggest factor with those species that you just mentioned is how fast can that shrub get up before it gets consumed. And amorpha or false indigo bush is a quick, fast grower. So if you have more questions, there will be more time at the end, but I want to make sure we get through all of our tree species before we reach the end of our time. We're going to start off with Catalpa speciosa, or northern Catalpa. This is a picture that I took at Cornell's Arboretum in New York State. They have not only topped this tree, but cut a little window you can look through. And the tree doesn't care. It's just still growing, doing its thing. So that is a tough plant if I've seen one. This is a facultative upland species. It has extra floral nectaries on its leaves. So these are areas that nectar is produced outside of the flower that attracts ants, wasps, and ladybugs that then defend that food source. So it's sort of like hiring their own bodyguards. This is Catalpa sphinx moth pictured in our nursery. They totally defoliated those plants, and we let them do it. We actually shipped plants with the Lepidoptera on it to Longwood Gardens and just said, hey, you're getting caterpillars. They're like, cool, bring it on. We love it. There is a black type and white type. You can actually see, if you look really closely, there are 3 of these caterpillars in a row. Can you see that if you look closely? So there were a lot of these on these relatively small plants. As I said, they totally defoliated the plant, and then they got parasitized by a wasp. So this is not only supporting a Lepidoptera, but now we've also supported a wasp through this one plant. Now, is it truly native to Pennsylvania? It's not. Do the bugs care? No, they don't. So assisted migration, is it something we should consider? I think it is something we can consider. Is it right for everybody in this room? Absolutely not. There should be some purists that say, I only want Pennsylvania plants. And there should be some people that are trying to bring plants out, as long as we're not doing so in a dangerous manner. Sassafras albidum, or sassafras. I like this one because I can't mess up the common name. It's very easy. Sassafras, known for its 3 leaf types. It has the regular normal true leaf, it has the mitten leaf, and it has what I call the Rebel Alliance leaf. So to me, it looks like the Rebel Alliance logo. These are close-up pictures I took, and this is a reminder for me to mention that those seeds or those berries that you see there are only usually every 2 years, 2 to 3 years you get berries. So why do you not see sassafras in our catalog every year? It's because we can't get seeds every year. If we don't have seeds, we don't have the trees, right? This is truly a facultative upland species, harsh, dry environments. Thrives on road cuts, where I see it quite often. Big breath here. It supports eastern tiger swallowtail, spicebush swallowtail, palomede swallowtail, pale swallowtail, sarcopia moth, promethea moth, polyphemus moth, imperial moth, and io moth. So it supports a lot of Lepidoptera species, which is really cool. This is in the running for most native plant. I'm not sure what most native plant means, but that map tells me that's what that means. And that's sassafras in its native environment at Longwood Gardens. Halesia carolina. If I was a pompous botanist, I would tell you it's Halesia, not Halesia, because it's named after someone with the last name of Hales. We'll just call it Carolina silver bells. This has beautiful, showy, white, drooping flowers, hence the name silver bells. This is a picture I took at the nursery. Facultative upland species, and I brought this one to you today because I think this is a replacement for flowering dogwood. Flowering dogwood has so many issues: anthracnose, powdery mildew, borers, to name a few of them. It's a plant that we sell tens of thousands of, and probably a lot of them die in the landscape. So this is a plant that I think has almost like a one-to-one, relationship, that if you wanted a flowering dogwood and you were worried about issues, Carolina silver bells does not have to my knowledge, any of those issues. We have never had to treat this plant for any significant issues in the nursery. How am I doing on time? Caenathus virginicus, or white fringe tree. Blooming very early in its life. There are male and female trees. The males are much more showy than the females, but the females do get blueberries. Just one of these plants that I love in the nursery because it's actually flowering when it's really young. It's a plant that requires a little bit of education, because if you're expecting a straight, perfect, upright tree, that's not what you're getting. This is what it wants to do in the landscape. It wants to be a big, open, sort of airy shrub. And this is where I get to do a little bit of talking about mature riparian buffers. Mature riparian buffers are sort of littered throughout Pennsylvania at this point, and work to go in and do any further planting is relatively small. But if you were looking to do that, this would be one of those great plants, along with Halesia, as an understory plant. I think they're hardier than people give them credit for, but if you were going to do any sort of work in a riparian buffer that's mature, that you wanted to plant, make it larger and bring out that canopy line on the side, Caenathus would be a great candidate for it. Another species that's moving its way from the south to the north. Carya cordiformis, bitternut hickory. The shortest live of the hickories. Guess what that means? 200 years. So still pretty damn long. Carya cordiformis, does anyone need to see that? I see people scribbling notes longer. Carya cordiformis, bitternut hickory. Very similar to shagbark hickory, except it does not have that bark that shagbark hickory does. We'll talk about ID of this one in a second. The nuts are pretty easy to spot. Truly native to our region, facultative plant, so doesn't mind being wet, doesn't mind being dry. It is a host for giant regal moth along with Luna moth. This is my second of 2 sci-fi references. This reminds me of the sandworm from Dune, if anyone's familiar with the movie. This is a Luna moth caterpillar that I saw at the nursery, and then the adult that we saw at the nursery as well. So really cool to support that. Carya cordiformis has yellow buds in the winter. So if you're wondering what you're looking at, you see these bright yellow buds, that's Carya cordiformis. Nothing else really looks like that. The reason you do not see hickories in the nursery trade is because of this picture. Well, not because of this picture, but this picture tells you the story. You can see how small that seedling is, and if you look closely, you can see the roots coming out the bottom of that pot already. If we had grown this in a traditional pot and left it there to get yay tall, that root would be triple, it'd be down through the ground, and we'd have to cut that root, ship it to you, and basically we're shipping you a dead plant at that point. So we only grow this plant as a seedling in these pots, and we have to educate every single person we send this to. You're getting a small plant. When you pull it out of the pot, it will be a carrot. That's what it will look like, but it will survive if you plant it right away and you do it justice by doing good planting practices. Juggala cinerea butternut. This is a plant that everybody's familiar with, black walnut. This is its distant cousin, the butternut. Actually has edible berries, edible nuts, hence the name, that spoil rapidly. So it's highly desirable for its edibility. Facultative upland plant, maybe even more native than sassafras. It does have butternut canker as a disease. It's something you should be aware of, that there is a canker out there that affects it. I don't think that it's something that's devastating like thousand canker is to black walnut, which actually, interestingly enough, just came off the list to grow. We used to not be allowed to grow black walnut, and now all of a sudden we are. This supports hickory horned devil. If you're prone to jump scares, I didn't warn you. This is hickory horned devil. Really scary looking insect, but perfectly harmless to handle. Just a cool plant. It also, by its namesake, grows or lives on hickories as well. All right. Staphylia trifolia, or American bladdernut. Who knows this plant? I told you I was going to stump everyone in this room at some point. So I think this might be the plant that did it. Really interesting seed pods. Nothing else really looks like this. It is a facultative plant, suckering, fairly fast growing, but does top out about 20 feet. So this is not a plant that you're going to be getting much canopy closure out of, but would be great on the edge of a riparian buffer. And it does have that adaptability being facultative. It's a plant that I scratch my head about that I don't know why people aren't growing it. It's really easy to get seeds. The seeds are available in the trade, so you can buy seeds if you can't collect them yourself. We have seeds this year. Maybe there's a reason that they're hard to grow. I'm going to find out. Hopefully we will be providing these to you this fall, though. The last plant I have on my list today is Aesculus flava, or yellow buckeye. Yellow buckeye looks like this as a young seedling. It is, we have found to be a very adaptable plant in the pot, that in a container, it grows in wet, it grows in dry. You can forget it in the nursery and it's still thriving. I chose yellow buckeye over bottlebrush buckeye and over red buckeye for a couple reasons. Bottlebrush buckeye has excellent ornamental value. It's won Plant of the Year from Delaware Nursery and Landscape Association, along with other merits that it's garnered over the years. Really not native to Pennsylvania, whereas yellow buckeye is native to Pennsylvania. And I chose yellow buckeye over red buckeye because, how many times can I say buckeye in this presentation? Red buckeye gets bacterial leaf scorch in the summer months and totally defoliates and looks like crap by the summer. Does it kill the plant? No. It comes back the next year rebounding and looks great, but yellow buckeye doesn't get that distressor like red buckeye does. This is not a mature tree that I have pictured here. This is a plant that we planted at Longwood Gardens in the back of house in the nursery area. This area, what you can't tell about it is that there was a construction site when they did the East Conservatory that they ripped up all the soil and they dumped all the fill soil over the top of this field, creating a really, really wet environment parts of the year and rock hard environment other parts of the year. So we tried lining out trees here. Only 2 species survived, or I should say, only 2 species thrived in that environment. Taxodium, because it liked the wetness, and Aesculus flava, for whatever reason, survived in those harsh conditions. So this plant did get transplanted eventually out into the gardens and is on display. Yeah, so Aesculus flava, another great plant, but I don't know that I've seen really, really large ones, but I think it takes time for them to get large. So if you plant this next to a tulip poplar, the tulip poplar is going to outgrow it. But if you're looking to grow, have a mixture, a matrix of different plants, Aesculus flava might be a really great long-term canopy closure plant. So with that, I'm going to end on my final slide. This is Arby Winter State Park in central Pennsylvania, up near State College, part of Bald Eagle State Park. This is a mature riparian buffer. This is what our riparian buffers used to look like. Canopy closure, deep or wide streams, and we've got a lot of in evergreens that we don't have in southeast Pennsylvania any longer. Hemlocks can't be grown down here, a plant that I forgot to include, that we have so much disease pressure or pest pressure from woolly adelgid, and there's a scale that affects it as well, that we can't grow it. I don't think we're going back to this. That's not the goal. The goal is to prevent loss of what we already have and do all the things that we identified early in the presentation. Prevent sedimentation, prevent fertilizer runoff, canopy closure, shading our streams. So with that, I'll thank all of you for having me today. Again, I'm Kevin Zeidervliet. There's my email. We'll open it up to questions, and I'll be around for the rest of the day. All right.
I've done a lot of planting, not only from the Keystone 10 Billion, but for the Stroud Water Research Center, and just other places that always buy octavero plants, and I want to say that these are the most successful plants I've ever planted. They're just raised so well that they do very, very well. I mean, I have to recognize that for everyone. But you mentioned something about you're considering retail sales. Could you say anything more about that?
We're not considering becoming retailers. We are selling to retailers. I have to be very clear about that. We are a wholesale nursery. We sell to anybody who can meet our minimum, which is $500. So $500 for pickup. We are located in Kirkwood, Pennsylvania. I'm going to repeat what she said. We grow the best plants in Pennsylvania. We really focus on the roots of plants. We believe we send roots out the door and you get the tops with it. So the tops are important, but the roots are more important because that's what's going to offer you the survivability in a harsh landscape. So thank you for saying
One
that.
other question, I may as well tack it on.
Yeah.
So Aeschylus flavia or flava?
Flava.
Flava. Can that be grown in clay soils?
So like I said,
So
when
floodplain, but clay soil.
that's where I've seen it being successful, is in harsh environments. Again, another plant, if you just went on and just did research and didn't actually observe it where it's outgrowing, you wouldn't get that answer. But where I've seen it growing is more harsh clay soil, fill soil environments. I saw a hand. Yeah. Yep.
It's great when we plant all these trees, but really the long-term maintenance is critical to their survival. Can you talk a little bit about the types of maintenance that are required to ensure that the plants that we put in the ground actually can reach maturity?
Yeah. I'll talk about it. I'll do my best, but it's not my area of expertise. Maintenance is certainly hugely important. We like to say that a lot of our plants never see the end of a garden hose, right? They get planted out in a harsh landscape and it's up to them to survive. That's not total reality. The tree tubes, tree shelters are paramount to success because of deer browse. It provides a shelter from not only deer browse, but deer buckrub. If you've ever looked closely at a shelter, which I have a picture way back in the slideshow, if you've ever looked closely at one of these shelters, there's actually a perforation along its edge, and you're supposed to leave the shelter on until that perforation breaks away. Because at that point, it's big enough that it won't get rubbed by deer, and you're supposed to come back and get those tree shelters and dispose of them properly. One of the things that I will shout out, we've already heard Stroud Water Research once today. I'll shout them out again. Stroud plants, as far as I know, exclusively only our plants and does a lot of great research on maintenance. One of the things that I want to talk about that they've found that stone mulch, so actually using gravel at the base of plants, this is really new research they've put out there, prevents weeds better than any other mulch out there. So there's a lot of work to be done with discovering more maintenance. We have not reached the point in this is how you do a riparian buffer. There's still a lot of work to be done. Mowing, spraying, reducing spraying would be great. So hearing things like stone mulches work, whereas in the past it was just standard practice to go around every tree tube and spray it with glyphosate. It works, but it's not ideal, right? Because we're just putting more chemicals out there. The one other thing I'll notice if you look closely, there is a product we sell, the bird net or the bird nets. Anyone familiar with the bird nets? Yeah. So another just point of sort of maintenance. Do I need the bird net? Well, do you want bittersweet inside the tube? Probably not. That's what it's preventing, is a lot of those presents from our bird friends coming down the tube. I answered that as best I could. It's not my area of expertise. Stroud Water Research would be the place I'd point you to, though.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So, I'm a student from Rowan University in South Jersey.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I know. And I'm part of an executive board for an environmental club on campus. And I'm looking to bring up the idea of partnering with other clubs as well as the school, because we have a tributary, a really small tributary from the Delaware running straight through our campus, and it covers like the entirety of like a mile and a half of our campus. And I'm interested in bringing up the idea of jump-starting like a native riparian buffer around there. Do you have any, out of all like those specifically shrubs, I guess, that you mentioned, or maybe trees, do you have any specific recommendations that would work in like on like a small stream with like minor foot traffic and like, you know, maybe less maintenance and stuff like that?
Less maintenance. Small stream, minor foot traffic. How big is this buffer? Real big,
This
size of
zone-
stream?
this zone in its entirety, it probably only extends like 30 feet.
Okay. Yeah. So don't plant amorpha. Don't plant the false indigo bush. That, you know, something like that is not appropriate for that site. Out of the plants I spoke about, you're talking about a place that is going to be trafficked, which a lot of riparian buffers aren't. You see them at 60 miles an hour as you whiz by them on the road, and there's no reason to have ornamental value there. But in your case, you're talking about a space that people will actually see and experience and enjoy. So I would encourage you to look at plants that do have ecological value that we talked about today, that have showy value. So something like silky dogwood might not be the best choice. It's a great plant. It's one of the staples that we've always grown, but it doesn't have a lot of ornamental value. So why not choose red osier dogwood, its cousin, that has winter interest in it? So because you're going to get more people interested in that space, you plant a hydrangea there that is buzzing with pollinators, as you said, the Fothergilla you mentioned. Hydrangea is the same way. It's almost attacked by honeybees in the summer months. You know, that's going to garner attention. So I would encourage you to look at plants that you're planting with an eye to both utility, beauty, and ecological value.
Kevin, can I add to your?
Yep, absolutely.
I would suggest before you think about plants, the first thing you should do is talk to the people who do the grounds maintenance for your university. Because you're going to have to solicit their support for ongoing maintenance and make sure that the guys in the lawnmower system come by and mow it. Is it mowed grass now?
Well, so
Some trees?
the zone, there's like some trees, there's not a lot of like native plants. The grass is generally like not necessarily like maintained within that
Yeah,
zone.
but it's just
but,
grass.
But it's mostly just grass. And we're talking with the groundskeepers and
Good.
you know the landscape architects right now about it. But it's in like very early phases. So.
Yeah. Get pushy.
I love that term, pushy. We mentioned Stroud Water Research. I didn't mention this. This is a Stroud project with our plants. This will be its third season. This was the year it was installed late in the summer. I need to go back and get an updated picture. The plants are fully out of their tubes at this point, so it's a cool project to see. It's all blue shirt here. Yep.
Yes, I just wanted to mention another resource, just for purposes of the gentleman from Rowan, for understanding your site, which is a very underutilized resource that we found as a county conservation district, are the USDA NRCS web soil surveys, just for purposes of understanding the site conditions, especially on sites that have not experienced any disturbance historically. So you can really learn a lot from those surveys in terms of drainage conditions of soils, depth of soils, and other characteristics. So that's a good one.
Yeah,
And it's
good.
free and in the public domain.
Free is excellent. Did I see another hand? Yeah.
I touched on this, but how did you determine the species you chose for riparian buffer plants? Was it a result of projects like these where you recommended them and they turned out really well, or did you see them just growing endemically throughout the city?
Most of it is really selfish. It's plants that I enjoy. It's plants I've seen thrive, not only in containers but in the landscape. A lot of the pictures, 95% of the pictures you saw today were pictures I've taken and just seen over the years, and there were 14 plants that I wanted to talk about today that didn't make it onto the list. I can read through them right now and watch your eyes glaze over. But you know, some examples like Osage orange would be a plant that I was like, should I talk about Osage orange? It's been brought here by people. Thank you, I see it, 10 minutes. But it's really truly native to the Midwest, but it's a really tough plant. So it was kind of hard for me to whittle down this plant list. And what I wanted to avoid today, I've been in too many presentations where it's just plant picture after plant picture after plant picture, and you're like, where am I today? So I wanted to be very particular in finding a plant species that has, it's a survivor. It grows in multiple different locations, which I think I talked about a lot today, and that it has ecological value. So a plant that I got off my list was yellowwood. Doug Talmy refers to that plant as a statue in the landscape. Even though it's native, it doesn't support a lot of Lepidoptera species. So I thought maybe not the best plant to stress today. So that's kind of my overall thinking on how I came to the decision. There is not a lot of work done with, as far as I know, many of these species planting out. Stroud is one is interested in partnering with us and is beginning to plant some of these species out and doing some work. It's not going to be any sort of serious study, but we'll start getting feedback from them, which is great. It's good to have relationships like that from people that you can say, hey, I suggest this plant, and they come back to you and say, never grow that plant again. We haven't had that yet. We haven't had that reaction, but we look for those sort of interactions with our customer base. So I think we've got maybe 2 more questions if anyone's got time. Well, you got time, I've got time. Yeah, go ahead, Rowan.
Yeah, I have a question more particularly about the company.
Yeah.
Do you guys wholesale just the plants, or do you wholesale the seeds as well?
We don't currently sell seeds because in general we cannot get enough seeds to produce the plants we want. As a general statement, very seldomly do we collect so many seeds of a given species that we have like a bumper crop that we're selling, that we're in a position of selling seeds. There was one time since I've been there that we had too many red oak acorns. It was just a spectacular year for red oaks for whatever reason, and that would be the only time that I've seen us possibly sell. We were thinking about selling seeds, and then we ended up growing and selling them all anyway. So no, we don't sell them. We do sell the products that I talked about today. So the tree tube, the white oak stake, the netting, and we sell the plants themselves. We sell container seedlings, which is a small Anderson band pot up into a 7-gallon, are the sizes we sell. Yep.
You moving it all toward, in terms of staking of your tubes, you moving it all towards fiberglass?
Yeah, it is a product we sell, and it's something that we had a really interesting conversation with Stroud about. One of their criticisms is they can't get them out of the ground after they've been there for a period of time. For whatever reason, the roots and then they end up going through and cutting them, and now you're leaving a fiberglass stake essentially in the ground. So that was one criticism we had of them. The nice thing is they're reusable for a period of time, if you can get them out of the ground. The white oak stake, it'll disintegrate. It's a native plant, but it's the lumber industry. The fiberglass stakes come from abroad. So, you got to consider all of those things. The white oak stakes, I'll finish on this anecdote, is there is a local, our labor force at Occidental Native Plant Nursery is all Amish women, believe it or not. That's who produces our plants and loads our trucks, is all Amish women. And we have a very close relationship with the Amish community. There's a company called Kirkwood Wheels, not tires. I always say Kirkwood tires. Kirkwood Wheels that produces the spokes on the wheels of the buggies. They're the ones that actually make our white oak stakes. So Amish made, local. So if you have any more questions, I'm around today. Talk to me at lunch or in between sessions. Again, thank you so much for your attention. It was great being here.